When we talk about masturbation after 50, one of the first things to consider is its relationship to physical health. It's easy to dismiss self-pleasure as something that belongs to youth, but the reality is that our bodies, regardless of age, thrive on touch, connection, and stimulation. As we age, certain physiological changes naturally occur. For men, there may be a gradual decline in testosterone, leading to reduced libido or changes in erectile function. For women, menopause often brings about vaginal dryness, thinning tissues, and decreased sensitivity. These shifts can make sexual activity seem more complicated, even discouraging. And yet, that's precisely why masturbation can become not only relevant but beneficial. Masturbation helps maintain blood flow to the genitals, which is essential in preserving tissue elasticity and sensitivity. In many ways, it's like exercising any other part of the body. You use it or you risk losing it. Regular stimulation helps prevent atrophy in the sexual organs. For men, it can support prostate health and maintain erectile function by keeping the muscles involved in erection and ejaculation active. For women, it can help preserve vaginal lubrication and elasticity, reducing the discomfort that often accompanies dryness and disuse. Beyond the sexual organs themselves, there's a cascade of physiological responses that take place during masturbation that are good for the body. The release of endorphins and oxytocin during climax can reduce stress and promote better sleep, two things that often become more elusive with age. There's also a temporary boost in circulation, which may help improve immune function, and a reduction in the stress hormone cortisol, which over time can benefit cardiovascular health. In a very real way, sexual self-care becomes a part of whole body wellness. Let's also acknowledge that aging can bring on a variety of health conditions, arthritis, diabetes, high blood pressure, that might affect sexual function or create discomfort during traditional intercourse. Masturbation offers a gentler, more controlled environment where individuals can explore their bodies without the pressure of performance or the unpredictability of a partner's needs. It becomes a way to remain sexually active and responsive on one's own terms, accommodating the shifts in energy, mobility, and sensation that naturally come with getting older. But the benefits aren't just about maintenance, they're about enhancing quality of life. People who continue to engage with their bodies sexually often report feeling more alive, more connected, and more at peace with the aging process. It's not about chasing youthful performance, it's about staying in touch with a part of yourself that still deserves attention and care. Sensuality doesn't retire. Desire doesn't necessarily disappear with age. What changes is the way we approach it, and masturbation can be a meaningful part of that evolution. Still, it's important to be aware that some individuals may experience a decline in libido or changes in sensation that feel discouraging. And while that's normal, it doesn't mean sexual pleasure is off the table. Sometimes, it just means we need to take a different route. Slower stimulation, better lubrication, creating the right environment. All these factors can enhance the experience and make it more pleasurable. Tools like vibrators or arousal gels are not just for the young. They can be incredibly helpful allies for anyone navigating the changes that come with time. It's also worth noting that for some, masturbation becomes a private form of self-expression that is deeply grounding. There's no one to impress, no expectations to meet, just a chance to reconnect with your own body. That kind of autonomy is powerful, especially in a world that often tells older adults to disengage from their sexuality altogether. In the end, what we're really talking about is health, sexual health, yes, but also emotional and physiological well-being. Masturbation is not a frivolous act or something to be ashamed of. It's a valid, often overlooked part of a healthy, aging body. When embraced without guilt, it can be a regular part of self-care, like stretching in the morning or taking a walk after dinner. It keeps things moving, blood, energy, even self-esteem. And most importantly, it sends a powerful message to ourselves that we are still worthy of pleasure, still capable of intimacy, and still very much alive. When we think about sexuality after 50, we often focus on the physical, what the body can or can't do, what's changed, what's working. But there's another layer that's just as important, if not more so: how we feel about ourselves and how we relate emotionally to our own bodies. Masturbation, for many people, becomes not only a tool for physical wellness, but also a pathway to emotional grounding and psychological well-being. As we age, identity can start to shift. Children may have grown and moved out, retirement might be on the horizon, and the roles we've held for decades can start to blur. For some, that means facing questions of worth, purpose, or desirability. And in all of that change, the way we connect with our own bodies can become complicated. Masturbation offers a deeply personal, private way to reclaim a sense of self. It can serve as a reminder that we are still capable of pleasure, still deserving of touch, and still present in our own skin. There's something powerful about being able to experience intimacy with yourself without judgment or performance. After 50, that space for quiet exploration can be healing. You don't have to impress anyone, you're not on a stage. You're just you in your body, allowing yourself to feel. That kind of self-connection reinforces self-worth in ways that go far beyond the act itself. It tells you I matter, my comfort matters, my pleasure matters. And when you carry that energy into the rest of your life, into your relationships, your decisions, your daily self-talk, it builds confidence from the inside out. Loneliness is a very real issue for many older adults. Whether it's due to loss of a partner, reduced social circles, or changes in living situations, that sense of isolation can have a profound impact on emotional health. While masturbation doesn't replace human connection, it does offer a kind of emotional reassurance. It's an affirmation that you are still connected to yourself, to sensation, to life. Even in solitude, there's something incredibly comforting in knowing that pleasure is still available, still within reach, and still something you can give yourself. On a psychological level, self-pleasure can act as a natural form of emotional regulation. During climax, the brain releases a cocktail of feel-good chemicals, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, that help relieve anxiety, ease depression, and foster a sense of calm. These neurochemical responses are not just side benefits, they're part of how our nervous systems balance themselves. Especially in a world where stress is chronic and rest is elusive, this kind of release can be therapeutic. It's not just about feeling good in the moment, it's about supporting long-term emotional resilience. And let's not forget the role of self-awareness. Masturbation can be a mirror, revealing how we're really feeling. Are we relaxed or tense, curious or checked out? Sometimes we don't realize how disconnected we've become until we slow down and really tune in. That's what self-touch can invite, not just arousal, but awareness. With that awareness comes the opportunity to nurture, to be gentle, and to adjust, whether that means changing how we touch ourselves, how we speak to ourselves, or how we navigate intimacy with others. For those in relationships, masturbation after 50 can also enhance partnered intimacy rather than diminish it. By understanding what feels good to us individually, we bring clearer communication and greater confidence into our connections with others. There's no need for guessing games or unmet expectations when we have a deeper understanding of our own pleasure. And for those not currently in a relationship, it offers a way to remain sexually alive without depending on someone else for validation or touch. It becomes a celebration of independence, not a symptom of lack. Of course, this isn't always easy. Many people carry decades of shame or silence around masturbation. Perhaps they were taught it was wrong or inappropriate or something to outgrow. Those messages can run deep and they don't just vanish with age, but that's why it's worth talking about openly and honestly. Because when we give ourselves permission to explore, to feel, and to express without shame, we start to undo that damage. We start to rewrite the story, not just of sexuality, but of self-acceptance. Masturbation after 50 is not about clinging to youth or chasing some ideal version of passion. It's about being fully present with who we are now, body, mind, and spirit. It's about making space for pleasure in a life that may already be full of responsibilities, losses, or transitions. And in doing so, it reminds us that joy is not something we outgrow. It's something we continue to choose, moment by moment, in all the ways that matter. When we talk about masturbation after 50, it's important not to paint an overly simplistic or one-sided picture. Yes, there are undeniable benefits physically, emotionally, psychologically, but that doesn't mean there aren't also challenges or misconceptions that come with the territory. This is especially true for older adults who often carry decades of cultural baggage, personal beliefs, or lived experiences that shape their relationship with sexuality. That's why it's so important to talk openly about both the help and the hindrance, because growth only happens when we're willing to look at the full picture. One of the most persistent challenges is the stigma. Many people over 50 grew up during a time when masturbation was treated as something shameful, embarrassing, or even harmful. It wasn't openly discussed, and if it was mentioned, it was often in hushed tones or with warnings attached. Those messages don't just disappear over time, they take root. Even if someone understands intellectually that self-pleasure is normal and healthy, there can still be an underlying sense of guilt or discomfort that surfaces in private moments. That internal conflict can make it difficult to fully enjoy or even initiate self-touch, let alone talk about it. And let's be honest, society hasn't exactly done a great job of challenging those outdated ideas. In mainstream media and public conversation, older adults are rarely portrayed as sexual beings. And when they are, it's often framed as comedic or unusual, like it's some kind of anomaly. That cultural silence reinforces the idea that sex, and by extension masturbation, is something you're supposed to leave behind as you age. But that narrative simply isn't true. Desire may evolve, but it doesn't vanish. Sensuality doesn't expire. And pretending it does only isolates people further. Another potential obstacle is the issue of over-reliance. While masturbation is a powerful tool for self-care and emotional grounding, like anything, it can become problematic if it begins to take the place of other forms of connection or communication. For some, especially those dealing with loneliness, grief, or relationship struggles, masturbation can become a kind of emotional refuge, a safe place to retreat. And while there's nothing wrong with finding comfort in your own body, it's important to stay aware of whether it's becoming a substitute for deeper emotional needs. If we use it to avoid vulnerability, to sidestep intimacy with others, or to numb ourselves from difficult feelings, it can quietly shift from being helpful to hindering our growth. Then there are the physical changes that come with aging, and these can introduce real challenges to the experience of self-pleasure. Decreased sensitivity, hormonal fluctuations, reduced blood flow, or side effects from medication can all make masturbation feel different than it once did. Sometimes less satisfying or more frustrating. For some, this leads to discouragement or even a sense of loss. It can be tempting to give up entirely and assume that the window for sexual pleasure has closed. But more often than not, the issue isn't a lack of potential. It's a need for new approaches. What worked at 30 might not work the same way at 60, and that's not a failure, it's just a shift. Adjusting technique, using lubrication, incorporating toys, or simply slowing down can make a significant difference. It's about staying curious and adapting rather than resigning. There's also a subtle but important point around communication. In partnered relationships, especially long-standing ones, the topic of masturbation is often avoided. Some people worry that if their partner is masturbating, it means something is lacking in the relationship, that they're no longer desired, or that intimacy is being withheld. Others may feel embarrassed to admit they still masturbate, fearing judgment or misunderstanding. These assumptions can create unnecessary distance between partners. But the reality is that solo sexual expression and partnered intimacy are not mutually exclusive. In fact, when openly acknowledged, they can complement each other beautifully. The key is open, honest, and compassionate dialogue, something that can be difficult, but deeply rewarding. And finally, we have to address the quiet resignation that some people feel. The belief that because they've aged, their sexual life is over, or no longer relevant. This kind of thinking is not only untrue, it's deeply limiting. It can create a sense of disconnection from the body, from pleasure, and even from one's own sense of aliveness. The truth is, our capacity for pleasure doesn't disappear. It simply asks to be approached differently. Masturbation after 50 isn't about chasing what was. It's about honoring what is. It's about staying connected in a world that often tells us to disconnect. And in facing these challenges head on with honesty, compassion, and a willingness to explore, we give ourselves permission to live fully in every stage of life. If we're going to talk honestly about masturbation after 50, then we can't stop at the physical, emotional, or even psychological levels alone. We have to take it one step further to the social and cultural space. Because even if someone is open-minded, even if their body is capable and their curiosity is alive, they still have to navigate the silence that surrounds sexuality in later life. That's why open conversation is not just helpful, it's necessary. When we normalize these discussions, we empower people to reclaim a part of themselves that might have been hidden, dismissed, or quietly pushed aside for years. For many, especially those who have grown up in more conservative or closed-off environments, talking about masturbation can feel like crossing a line. There's a long-standing belief that it's a private matter, something to be kept quiet, tucked away, or maybe not even acknowledged at all. And that belief is even stronger when it comes to older adults. There's this unspoken rule that past a certain age, we're supposed to become asexual. That any expression of desire is somehow inappropriate, laughable, or unnecessary. But that kind of thinking doesn't reflect the reality of aging, and it certainly doesn't reflect the needs and desires of real people. What happens when we stay silent is that shame lingers. People suffer alone, question themselves in silence, and lose out on valuable opportunities for connection, not just sexual, but emotional and even medical. Think of how many individuals hesitate to bring up their sexual health with a partner or a healthcare provider because they fear being judged, dismissed, or misunderstood. And yet, this silence doesn't protect anyone. In fact, it often makes things harder. It creates distance, reinforces misinformation, and contributes to the idea that sexual expression is something to grow out of rather than something to grow into. That's why open conversation matters so much. When we talk about masturbation without embarrassment, we challenge the outdated assumptions that keep people from accessing joy and well-being. We give others permission to ask questions, to reflect, to explore, and to accept themselves without guilt. And more importantly, we create space for honesty, because let's face it, no two experiences of aging are exactly alike. Some people feel vibrant and sexually curious in their 70s. Others may be navigating grief, health issues, or emotional blocks. But everyone benefits from knowing that they are not alone, that their experience, whatever it may be, is valid. In relationships, especially long-term ones, having open conversations about self-pleasure can actually strengthen intimacy. It allows couples to redefine what sexual connection looks like over time. Instead of letting assumptions or unspoken expectations build up, it creates a foundation of trust. One partner may still be interested in partnered sex while the other is not, or the nature of their physical connection might be evolving. When masturbation is acknowledged as part of the sexual landscape rather than a secret or a sign of dissatisfaction, it brings relief. It can even invite creativity, curiosity, and mutual respect into the relationship. Even outside of romantic relationships, talking openly about masturbation can be liberating. With friends, in peer groups, in workshops, or communities centered around aging and wellness, these conversations can dismantle isolation and reframe the aging process. It's powerful to hear someone say, "Yes, I still desire. Yes, I still explore. Yes, I still matter." That kind of honesty is contagious, and it starts to shift the cultural narrative. It tells the world that aging is not a closing down, it's a continuing evolution, and it makes room for people to grow into themselves with dignity, not shame. We also can't ignore the fact that misinformation about masturbation, especially in older adults, is still widespread. Some believe it's harmful, that it drains energy, or that it's only for those who are single or lonely. None of that holds up to current understanding, but without conversation, those myths go unchallenged. When we speak openly, we not only validate personal experience, we help educate others. We bridge the gap between science and story, between what we've been told and what we now know to be true. There's real freedom in giving ourselves permission to talk about pleasure, not performative, surface-level talk, but real, grounded, honest dialogue. It's about recognizing that our sexual selves don't disappear with age, they mature. And with that maturity comes the right to explore, to adapt, to redefine what intimacy looks like. Whether we're in partnerships or living independently, whether we've been sexually active all our lives or are rediscovering it after a long pause, the common thread is permission to be whole, because in the end, masturbation after 50 isn't just about sexual wellness. It's about owning your experience. It's about honoring your needs, challenging the silence, and standing unapologetically in your truth.